Hi, I'm Paul, and this is another of my little sessions on PowerApps. And in this session I want to have a look at the lookup function and dropdowns, and specifically in the context where you are using a database, perhaps as your SQL DB or SQL Server, where you have a normalized data structure and where you're using surrogate keys. So let's have a quick look at the data structure that we're going to be using and have a quick talk about it. So we're going to be using two tables for this demonstration. We're going to be using the menu item table, and the menu item table includes a menu category ID, and that is a reference back to this menu category table. So we're using surrogate IDs, or surrogate keys, sorry. We're just using an incrementing number which then ties back to the full information in the table. So let's just show what those tables look like. So this is my categories table. I've got category ID 1, 2, 3, 4. Each category has a name. And then for my menu items, each menu item of course has a name and a price, and it also has the category ID. So I can see this is category ID 1, and number 1 is a drink. Okay, here's another one, a mocha mint. A mocha mint is category ID 15. Well, category ID 15 is a frap. Okay, so why do this? Why have these surrogate keys, which are numeric identity columns, and link to those? Well, if you've got a large database, you can get some real performance and storage benefits out of using IDs joining on numeric fields, rather than repeating, say, the word drink over and over again in these columns. So I don't want to focus on that for the moment, but it's a very commonly used technique in databases, and although it might not make much difference in tables of the size that I'm showing on here at the moment, there are other tables in my solution where it would make a difference, where I've got a lot more data. And so for the sake of consistency, I've decided to use the same system throughout, where I've got surrogate keys being used to represent each row of data. Okay, so given that that's the setup we've got, that does cause us a few issues within PowerApps, and we need to have ways of working around those. So let's see the first one. So I'm going to put in a gallery, first of all, of my menu items. So I've already connected to my menu item and menu category tables. And let me just put in a few fields here. There we are. So I've popped in 3 fields. One of them is going to be the name, one of them is going to be the category. So we'll just wait for PowerApps to catch up with us here. Here we are, menu category, and we'll have the final one as being the menu price. Here we are, menu price. Okay, I'm just going to rearrange these quickly on the screen. We're not going to worry much about formatting in this session because that is time consuming, and we want to be concentrating on, as I say, lookups and dropdowns. So let's just get this good enough to see what's going on. There we are. Okay, so we can see that we've connected to the menu item table, and obviously what we're seeing is the category ID. We're not seeing the actual category, so it says number 1 rather than drink. Now, a limitation of PowerApps is that we can't connect to a view. If we could connect to a view, life would be so much simpler, because within our database backend we could simply create a view which gave us all of these columns from the menu item table plus the category spelt out in full as an additional column against menu item, and we could use that. Unfortunately, that's not possible at the moment. I say at the moment because the ability to connect to a view is, I think, the most requested item on the user feedback for PowerApps at present. But it's not there right now, so we've got to work our way around it. So this first one is fairly simple to work around. What we want to do is not show the category ID, we want to show the category, so we want to look up this number in the menu category table and return the name of the category that's against it. So we can do that with the lookup function. So let's put that in now. So lookup function. For the lookup function, the arguments, we've got to give it a source, we've got to tell it where to get the data from. So that's going to be our menu category table. And we want to then give it a condition, so it's going to be where the category ID in the menu category table is equal to this item from the gallery dot menu category ID, and we have to say which column we want to bring back. So we say we're going to look in the category table where the category ID matches the category ID for the currently displayed item, and what we want to bring back is the category column. So we'll pop that in there and we will let it refresh, see PowerApps going and pulling the data out of Azure SQL DB, and here we can see now we've got drinks and then we've got some fraps. There we are, appetizers, rice and so on. So we can see that that's working quite nicely. We're able to use the lookup to pull the information back. So that's sort of the first thing we need to overcome hurdle-wise. The next thing that we are going to have a look at is having a form where we can modify an existing menu item record. So for that we might want to change the name or change the category or change the price, or where we can add a completely new menu item where again we're going to want to assign a category to it. So let's quickly add a form to this screen. So here's my edit form. Let's shuffle it across a little bit so that we've got some space to work with. And we're going to again use our menu item as our source for this. And we'll have the menu item name and the category ID and the price. So the same as what we've got in our gallery, so we can modify the things from our gallery if we want to and add new things. Okay. So there we are. Again, as I say, I'm not going to waste time by doing a lot of formatting. I think you can see well enough to get the concepts. So we've set our data source to say this is going to be for things in the menu item table. But now we've got to say which particular item we want to work on. When you do the sort of out-of-the-box solutions, I think what PowerApps does is for the items property is it simply says, okay, whatever is selected in the gallery. So it would give you something like gallery dot selected dot I think it's just gallery dot selected, isn't it? Yeah, there we are. So gallery dot selected. So each time you click on something in the gallery and select it, okay, our form is updating to display what we've got. So we can do it that way. Another way that we can do it, which can be quite useful sometimes, is we can add an icon or a button. So let's find the right icon. Just pop that over here on the far right hand side. And a little technique that we can use is we can say, right, when we click on this little button, what we want you to do, in addition to just selecting the parent, is also to set a variable. I'm going to call this var menu item, and I can just set it to be this item. There we go. And then in our form, items, we can just set that to be our var menu item. So now this form is only going to populate with things when we actually click on the button to say, right, I want to modify this item. So we've been able to pass through the item that we want to modify using that little technique. That's very useful if you might get to this form from multiple different places. So you wouldn't want it to be tied to a specific gallery, better that you have it tied to a variable, and then you can pass whatever you want into that variable from different galleries, different forms, whatever it may be. Okay, so here we are. So we've got our form set up, and again what we're seeing is we're seeing the category ID, and what we want to see is the ideally a drop down of the different categories that are available so that we can modify it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a drop down, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock this data card, because I want the drop down to go inside this data card, and you have to unlock the data card before you can add other controls to it. So now that I've unlocked that data card, if I now go to controls and choose drop down, hopefully the drop down will appear inside the data card, and there you can see on the navigator my drop down number 3 is part of this data card. So if you're adding additional controls to a data card, make sure that you've unlocked the data card first of all. Otherwise what happens, let's just do it with menu item, this one is not unlocked, and although it's selected, when I say right, give me a drop down, okay, there, can you see what's happened? The drop down didn't go inside the data card, it just got added as another item on my form. So unlock your data cards and then add the controls to them as a tip. So menu category ID, so I want to populate now this drop down. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to say what I want for its items property is going to be our menu category list. So now our drop down has got our category items in it. There we go. Just takes a few clicks when we're in designer mode. But I want this to represent the category of the item. So that one has come out as drink, but that's just random. That's just because drink is the first item in the category list. If I choose one of these main meal items and click on the little arrow, there we are, we can see it still says drink, because all it's done is it's selecting the first item out of the menu category listing. It's not linked in any way currently to the data card. Now what I could do is I could link this so that the selected item was number 3. In fact, let's go and do it, but there is a problem with that which we will show you, but we'll do it so that we can see the technique a couple of times. So I want to set the default item, which is in this drop down, and I could set this to be in this case it's going to be main, which is item number 3. So what I actually have to do is a lookup again. So I can say set this to be lookup in the menu category table, where the category ID is equal to, and this is data card 11, so it's going to be data card value 11. You can't quite see it in there, but I think that's what it is. Data card value 11 dot text, get the text out of the data card. And the category ID is always going to be numeric, and potentially a text value might not be numeric. So we can do two things here. We can either wrap this in a value function, or I'm lazy, I'm just going to put ×1 on the end of it, which kind of implicitly converts it to a numeric. And remember, we've got to say what we want our result to be. So we're saying look in the menu category table where the category ID is, in this case it's going to be 3, and the thing that we want to pull back is what is in the column called category. Okay, so let's do that. Let's give it a moment to do its refresh, and there we are. We can see that says main. Let's pick another thing from our list here. Let's have a pasta this time. So pasta is item number 11, and so our drop down is now pasta. So that's great, but now we want to perhaps change this to a different category. So the user would come in and say, actually no, I don't want this in the pasta category, I want this to be in the main course category. But of course, if we look here, our what we select in our drop down is not driving what's in our data card value, and it's the data card value which is the one that will be recorded. We'll have to add a little submit button on here in a moment, but that's what would be recorded. So we've got no link between these at the moment, other than this being set initially to the value which is in the data card. So you would think, right, what we need to do then is set the data card ID to the ID of the item we've selected from the category list, but of course that isn't going to work because it's going to create a circular reference. Okay, we've already said this is based on that, so we can't say that is based on this as well. We'd be going around in circles all the time. Okay, so we're going to have to change things ever so slightly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, when I click on the little arrow, also set a variable which represents my category ID. There we are. So now I've got a variable set. So when I push this button, var category ID is going to be whatever the ID behind, in this case, drink is. And I'm going to set my drop down to be not based on what's in the data card, but in my var category ID instead. There we go. And now I will be able to set my data card value to be whatever is selected in the drop down. So now I'm going to go to my data card value. There we are. And at the moment it's set to parent default, so it's set to whatever the value for that record is. But we're going to change it. And we're going to say this should now be based on whatever is selected in our drop down. So we can say drop down 3 dot selected dot category ID. And if you have a look here, you can see that the drop down does actually contain all of the columns, so we don't have to do another lookup. Category ID is included in here as well as the category name. So let's make that category ID. There we go. So now what we should find is if we change the value in our drop down, so let's make this a dessert. Okay, there we are. So that value has now changed. So we're now in a situation where when we click on an item in our gallery, or when we click on the button to edit the item, the drop down will automatically be set to the correct category, and if we change the category within the drop down, then the value in the data card is going to be modified, and then that's what gets stored in the database itself. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. But we might also, as I say, want to have the facility to add new items in this form as well. So I'm going to put in a button for a new item. Okay, I've obviously gone past it. Where's the little plus symbol? There it is, right at the top. Went straight past it. Oh, and that's gone inside my data card because the data card was selected. So let's take that back out again. Apologies, there we are. So let's hit the add button. So in our on select for the add button, we're going to want to do form new, and our form name is form 4, so that when we click on this button, oopsie, we've got an error. What's our error? Okay, bear with me a moment. Okay, sorry about that. It's not form new, it's new form. Okay, new form, form 4. So now when we click on that button, it's going to give us a new form. Something that we ought to do as well while I think about it is specify on here that when we're coming in through this route, we want to be in edit form mode. There we are, otherwise things are going to get a little bit tangled. Okay, so when we hit the new form button, we're getting a blank item name, a blank menu price, but we've already got a category filled in. Now you might not mind that, but one thing just to be aware of is if we go into the edit mode, there we are, and this is a main. If I then hit the plus to say, right, give me a new one, our category ID is still set as main, so it's set to whatever was left over from the last record that we were editing. There are things that we could do about that, so we could in here say we want to set our variable for the category ID, and we'll just set that to number 1, which is drink. So at least you've got some consistency now. Every time we go into a new form, it's going to show drink. But you may want instead to force people to select something from the list. So you may want this to say something like please select, so that people have a sort of a trigger there. They don't just leave the default value. So we can do that, but we need to add a please select to this drop down, and then when we hit the plus button, make sure that's the one that is displaying. So let's see how we can do that. We're going to do that with a collection, and it's good to look at collections because you will also notice on here that things are quite slow at the moment. When we're clicking on things, it takes a while for the system to go and get the data from the category table and populate this drop down. So we're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We're going to try and speed things up a little bit by using a collection, and we're going to use a collection to give us an additional option in our drop down, which is just going to say please select, which is going to trigger people hopefully to choose the right item. Okay, Now what I'm going to do for right now is I'm going to add a button, which is going to be what we use to create our collection. So I'm going to use the command clear collect, which empties anything out of the collection first of all and then repopulates it. I'm going to call my collection col menu category, and I'm going to set it to be what's in my menu category table. Okay. So that now is going to give me a collection which represents all of the rows from the category table, but I need another row as well, which is going to be for my please select text. So this time I'm going to do a collect col menu category, and I'm going to add just what I need. So I'm going to need a category ID, which is going to be 0, and a category name, which is going to be please select, and I'm going to put a little space in front of it, which we'll see in a moment, is so that we can sort it to the top of the list of items in the drop down. Okay, so let's click on our button to make sure that our collection gets populated. You can see that your collection is populated by going into the view and the collections. It only shows the first 5 items, but we can see those in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to base this drop down on, here we are, not on the base table, but on my collection. Col menu category. Fantastic, there we are. And hopefully we should now see there it is, please select, which has been added at the bottom of our list, because when we are putting things in our collection, if you recall, we first of all put in all of the things from the category table, then we put in the things, the additional entry, that I wanted. Now I've done it this way around because if I try and do this command first and then collect in the rest of the items from the menu category table, it won't work because I've only put in these 2 fields initially. I'd have to put in every field which exists in the menu category table before I could combine those things together. It's fine when you're doing it this way around because this is a subset of the fields which are in menu category, but I can't then do it the other way around and add a superset with additional fields on top. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I want my category items to appear in order and with please select at the top. So what I'm going to do is, in my items here, it might be easier actually to edit up here, I'm just going to do a sort by columns. So sort by columns, this is what I want to sort. I want to sort it by the category. There we are. And so that should now give it to us, yes, in order with our please select at the top. And then so that our please select appears in here, when we click on the plus sign, we will set our var category ID to 0. So remember, in here we set the category ID as 0 for the please select. Okay, so now when we hit the plus sign, should set file category ID to 0. Set file category ID to 0. Okay, and yeah, so we've got to just change our default here. Sorry, I didn't spot that. That's got to be column menu category as well. Okay, because of course the value 0 does not exist in the base table. It's only in our collection which we've made, which is the base table plus the please select option. So there we are. So we've now got an option there, please select. And if we were to put the submit button on here and we were to actually try and submit it with 0 still in, then we should get an error, because within our database we've got a relationship defined that says you cannot have a category ID in here that does not exist in here. So the value 0 is good to use in our Power App for our please select item, because 0 is never going to be a valid category ID within the database. So if they try to hit save when this has got still a 0 in there, they should get an error telling them that the item couldn't be saved. Of course, you can put a little bit of error handling yourself on here and say, okay, when you submit, if this is still a 0, then warn the user as well that they haven't yet selected an item from the list. Okay, so I think I'll leave it there, because we've already used up half an hour. I suspect you already know how to add a button on here to submit the results. The important things I wanted to get across were the lookup function and using the drop down inside a data card when what you're dealing with is IDs, but what you want to show are the actual items from the reference table. Hope that's been useful. Leave me a comment if you have any questions or you want to say whether it was a good or a bad session. Feedback is always greatly welcomed. Thanks very much, and good luck with your PowerApps. Okay, so just a couple of other things to add quickly here. What we haven't done yet, of course, is set our source in our lookup in our gallery yet. So you would want to remember to do that, okay, because that should work a little bit quicker, because that information is cached locally rather than the system having to go off and look up what's in the menu category table all the time. And I put my code for populating the collection on a button. What you would probably want to do is have this, for example, on the start of the screen, so when the screen starts up, and perhaps also on a refresh button or a reload button. Let's quickly pop a reload button on here. Okay, so there's a reload. And what you can do now, which is quite nice from a code reuse point of view, is we can actually say, right, when I click on this or when the screen opens, then run whatever code is behind this button. And that's really quite nice, because it means you don't have to keep repeating things in lots of places if there are various different events which can you know, trigger the same actions. So in my on select for my reload button, I can just say select, this is button 3. Okay, if this were a real application, I would be naming all of my controls so that they make a lot more sense, the formulas, when I read them. And we can also just do the same thing. So select button 3, we can do the same thing in the screen on start property. There we go. Fantastic. So now when I click this reload button, the reload button is also going to refresh my menu category information. And of course, you know, if this reload is above the gallery, I'd probably want to reload the information in the gallery as well. So we can just put a refresh menu item in there too. There we are. So it's cutting down on the amount of repetitive coding that I've got to do, and allowing me to manage everything from one place. So now I can refresh this if I'm in development mode by clicking the button, if I'm in the production mode when the screen itself starts, and also by clicking the reload button when I want to trigger a reload manually as a user. Okay, so that's it for this session. I hope that was of use. Please give me some feedback in the comments below, and good luck with your Power Apps.